Okay, so for my presentation, I'm going to walk through my work on my redesign of the SEPTA website. And so SEPTA is essentially the metropolitan public transit system for the city of Philadelphia. Table of contents, first kind of give some general information about the project, then kind of talk about my testing process, the design process, and then finally a retrospective as well. So first, again, SEPTA is short for Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, and it is kind of the public transit organization that services the Philadelphia area. Before COVID, SEPTA reported approximately 300 million riders each year. I mean, of course, with COVID, it's about half that now. But ridership is increasing again. So the existing content on the site can kind of be broken down into four big categories, and so that is travel, so schedules, routes, that type of thing. News, so news bulletins, social media posts. Third is business, if say you're looking for a career with SEPTA, or general, which is just kind of pertains to like the general operation of SEPTA. And so, this is just a lot of, different content, and it was really kind of spread around the sites in a way that wasn't very clear. So next, to kind of talk a bit about the personas that I use to kind of have a tunnel vision into kind of, oh, what are people actually using the site for? So the first is Susan, and so she is kind of a first time visitor to Philadelphia, and she is relying on SEPTA to kind of understand how to get from the airport to see her son who recently moved there. And then second is Rachel, and so she lives in kind of like the Philadelphia area, and she relies on SEPTA to commute to work, and so she is kind of interested in like kind of like the real time updates of SEPTA transit. So next to talk a bit about the testing process. So there were kind of four main aspects to the testing process. The first was, a content inventory. So, kind of taking stock of all of the different types of content that is currently on the SEPTA website. The second is two rounds. Sorry, two rounds card sorts. First, the first being open and the second being closed, the third being tree jack testing, and the fourth being first click testing. And I will kind of explain how I use those in the coming slides. So first, as I said, the SEPTA website is home to a lot of different types of content and information, and it can be hard to kind of find what you're trying to find. So to kind of help with that, I did a content inventory before doing any type of testing or restructuring, just to kind of see what was the current state. And then from this content inventory, not all the cards are pictured here, but I created 29 cards that I would use for the card sorts to kind of showcase like these subtopics that I found. So next, as I mentioned, I did two rounds of card sorts. So first, I did an open card sort, with those 29 cards, and just kind of participants let participants kind of categorize them in self-defined categories, just in a way that made sense to them. And the second, I kind of, the second round was a closed card sort, and I analyzed the results of the open card sort to kind of see, oh, what categories were people defining, how many were there, and that kind of informed the options. And so in the open sort, the median number of self-defined categories was 5, and participants sorted all cards. In the closed sort, again, participants were able to sort all cards, and their placements in terms of the predefined categories was generally pretty similar and consistent to that of the first round. Um, After that, I did some tree jack testing to kind of test the navigation of the kind of the updated um, sitemap and kind of my updated structure without any like visuals. And so I had five tasks that I tested with this method. The first was finding the price of a bus trip. Second was finding information on kind of partnering with SEPTA to perform some advertising. Third was reading about the policies of the SEPTA transit police. Fourth was reading about the physical and and the both of the physical and kind of like the general accessibility of SEPTA Transit, and lastly, or ordering a SEPTA t-shirt. So in terms of the results, generally the tasks went well. Um, Aside from task 4, the majority of participants were able to complete these tasks successfully. What I did notice for task 4 is that initially the accessibility topics were listed under policies and not travel, as this was kind of the way that I saw it kind of categorized in the card sort. But um, participants were kind of confused and typically checked travel instead of policies. So I thought that it made sense to move it to that spot instead. And lastly, in terms of testing, I did some first click testing. So showing participants some of the screens of the updated wireframes for the site and asking them to complete the tasks and specifically where they would click first. The first task was finding the real-time status of the Market Frankfurt line. The second task was finding the cost of a single ride, specifically with cash. In terms of the results, so the majority of participants were able to complete them successfully, although less were able to complete task 1. Something that I would be interested in kind of thinking about more is if having the recently viewed kind of section of the subway schedule page is confusing, and if it would be better to not include that feature. So next, we'll talk a bit about the design process. So first, so there were kind of 3 main aspects of this process. First was kind of using the results of the testing to create an updated sitemap. The second was to create wireframes with Axure using the key tasks that I had defined earlier. And 3 was just a general kind of idea of constantly changing, constantly taking in feedback and kind of changing the designs as needed. So talk a bit about the sitemap. So initially, the main navigation for the SEPTA website had a lot more than 4 kind of main topics. I think it was maybe 7 or 8. And so through the card sort, I was able to kind of pare that down and kind of group the categories to kind of condense both the content and also the number of options. When it comes to the wireframes for the first key task, again, I use the updated sitemap to kind of inform the path that users would go to find that information. Similar thing for task 2. Used the sitemap to inform kind of like the way that this should flow. And then lastly, talk a bit about kind of my takeaways and some future work for this project. So first, in terms of takeaways, I found just kind of using the content inventory to be very helpful in just taking stock of the content and even when paring it down. Second, I also really kind of enjoyed using card sorts because it's I'm not the one that has to kind of get into the minds of users. Instead, they can just tell me what makes sense to them, and I thought that was great. For the tree jack and the first click testing, I thought it was a really good tool to kind of test navigation, without like a visual prototype. And then when it comes to future work, I would like to kind of further develop prototypes for the rest of the site and conduct testing with it, and use that feedback to continue to kind of improve on the current structure. And lastly, I was the only member of this group, and I contributed to all aspects of the project. And that's all. Thank you.